and Jorge. Hi, welcome. Hey, we are streaming live on Clubhouse, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. And I had just started talking about the sort of the rules and the focus. And Dan, it's good that you stay muted. And then what I'll do is I'll call on you a couple of times, and we know that because you have roofers, there'll be punctuations in your statement because they're gonna bang at just the right time, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So here's the thing. I want us to be vulnerable. I want us to be credible. I want us to consider this a safe environment. The Generally speaking, I have a pledge for credibility, and the pledge for credibility nation has two really strong components to it. And what I'd like to be able to encourage you to think about is those strong components are being a servant leader and no hate in who you are and what you do. And so the potential rules for being knocked out of this group is by hey, Sushu's in the house. The potential rules for being knocked out of the group is not being of service to others and to actually demonstrating the opposite of love. You don't actually have to be lovey-dovey and woo-woo, but certainly hate is not really tolerated. There may be other places to go, but like I said, this is a safe environment, and I'd like to have us feel comfortable in our skins, feel comfortable with who we are, be able to say what's going on, what shared. What I might do is I'd like to bring us through a quick grounding to start, and then we'll open up the floor for questions and questions. I always pay attention to questions that come in from either Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, and I'm happy to answer those, or we'll focus on and I'll ask questions for those people who are in the room. So let me do a quick grounding if you don't mind. And what I'd like to encourage everyone to do is to close your eyes just for a couple of minutes. And for me, what I like to do when you close your eyes, the only downside with video with Dan and Jorge, I could see if your eyes are closed or not. Sorry. Sorry, guys. For the rest of you guys who are just on Clubhouse, I can't zoom into your rooms and see. So if you close your eyes, and my favorite way to ground is to take the two fingers of my thumb and forefinger and just rub them together and feel the different ridges of your fingers. Feel how it feels to rub those two together. And what I'd like to encourage you to do at the same time is start noticing your breath. Take a deep breath in and then let that breath out. Let's do that one more time. A deep breath in. And I'll encourage you in a meeting, if you're feeling uncomfortable or you're feeling stressed, just those two things for me really does work. I want you to think about a world. It's the start of the weekend for those in Europe and India. It's you're partway through the weekend. And what I want you to think to yourself is, how could it be is every time you woke up, you were surrounded by people who absolutely respected you. And when you feel that respect, you're feeling that love. When you're around those people together, it's 1 + 1 = 11. That you're in a world that everyone's goal is to be of service to others. And when you're in that world, you're feeling like the best of you always comes out. And sometimes the best of you is one that says, I don't know the answer. Can you help me? This is a world that I would love for us to live in. If you look at the countries around the world and the politics that are happening, we're becoming more and more divisive in terms of who we are and how we show up. And I'd like to change that. And we could change that with ourselves. So I'm just going to be quiet for a little bit of time and just let us think about a beautiful world where we're not at odds with the people who we've made a decision to hang out with, the people we made a decision to really be part of who we are and how we show up in the world. All right. So when you're ready, feel free to come back to today's world, and we will for the next hour be a place where you're surrounded by people who really love and respect you. So Jorge, what happened in this week? Anything exciting that you brought out that questioned your credibility or enhanced your credibility?
Well, that has been a tremendous, great week for me. I am doing a lot of research into a subject. When you want to be a leader, you want to pursue goals, you need information. And I have been learning how to manage my information diet, how I get information, how I do processing that information, how take advantage of the information that I get it to accomplish my goals. That is a great exercise that I am playing today and all the last week.
Interesting. When you say information, what's that mean to you?
Well, that's quite interesting. For instance, I want to develop a way how to share my knowledge with people and how people share knowledge with me. And I want to find a way with this trend today about using tokens and crypto for everything and try to move away from the financial that is a complete mess. I want to get into the knowledge side. And the thing is, if I want to achieve, for instance, how to create a great community, I need to learn a lot of things. And to learn that things, I need to have information. How you build communities, what are the subjects of the community, how you engage with the people in the community. And that requires a lot of information. If you start to search in Google, you get overflowed with too much information. And my goal now is, well, how I can invite a group of 10 or people, a selected group, and say, help me to choose what are the right information I need to do to create a great community.
I guess the question becomes what I've been thinking a lot about as we are trusting the media less, as we are not enjoying the news media, and there's a survey that recently came out from Reuters and the University of Oxford that said how much less we as the world is trusting different media outlets. The question becomes, how do we be more discerning? How do we look at information and be more careful on maybe never accepting the first choice, but going after and learning more? How do you go about doing that?
Well, that's a very big challenge in some way, because I agree with you. It's very, very problematic. Today, we don't trust in news. We don't trust in politicians. We don't trust in a lot of things. And the question here is how you surround with the people and say, okay, we want to talk about subjects, and how we find who is credible in that subject. And that the credibility nation is one of the goals, I guess, is quite important, that you would like really to see, okay, how do you think about a specific subject? Can you give me your points of view? You are congruent with your points of view, because sometimes you maybe say something and act in a different way, and that congruence is quite important.
Dan, what do you think about that topic?
Dan just left for an issue that he has on the roof, and he may come back later.
Oh, got it. Right. I just saw he left. Yep. I went to ask. Sushil, you're back in the house. Do you have a microphone access?
Hi, Michelle. Yes, I have. I have been having a network problem, so I think I got kicked out.
Ah, you're back now. So
Yeah.
the question that I had raised is there was a recent survey conducted by Reuters and the Oxford University, and essentially across the world we are trusting news media less. And so the question becomes, how do you actually focus on having more people or looking at information sources and maybe never looking at and accepting the first source, but looking at multiple? How do you be more discerning in your understanding and focus on news?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I just wanted to cue it up for you because we were already in that conversation.
Yeah, so I personally feel that yes, we somehow get focused onto one particular media which we start trusting, but most media, whether they are press or they are TV or whatever, they are they're manipulating things. They have either a political goal or they have their own business goals. They want to get their TRPs, they want to get their brownie points, they want to be breaking news first, and it becomes difficult for anyone to realize who is to be trusted and believed. So what I feel is that the public also is responsible for verifying facts. So for example, when I hear something which is, there are some facts. A train got derailed is a fact. An aircraft got crashed, fact. Okay, now when it comes to opinions, who's responsible and things like that, I try to get a couple of cross opinions from people, from different channels. And then if you go and Google it and you find some very factual articles and all, that gives you a balanced view. But having said that, I know that there's not a single media that I know which I would trust 100%.
That's interesting. So what's the most in India? What is technically the most discerning media? The one that in the past maybe everyone should have trusted 100%.
So generally, I'm talking more of TV, newspapers. I don't spend much time on. In fact, I feel that the newspaper carries so much of crap. It's very difficult to find out what to read. So I normally depend on articles and TV news. That's all what I depend on. And there are 2-3, like one is Times Now, because Times of India is a very trusted group. Even in the newspapers, in the print media, they're supposed to be the best. So they are more trustworthy than others. There's another one called Republic. I watch them a lot. At least I compare these two notes. Then we do something on CNN and BBC. If it is international news, you can get some authentic information there. And then when you get these couple of inputs, you get a fair idea.
Yeah. For me, I used to always think, and I still think the New York Times is a place of quote unquote credible content, but I will always back it up on looking at as many different sources as possible. The interesting part is how many people still rely on social media in terms of their consumption of news. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok actually has come up recently as well. I actually had somebody really feel comfortable saying Twitter. Twitter is the place they go because it's much more current. What do you think about that?
In India, I find that Twitter gets quoted the most, particularly on even on TV channels. It's all about who tweeted what. And all politicians, all celebrities, one thing they really do is tweet. So I think again it's a matter of getting a lot of insights from social media. And one of the sources which is, I think, the most, which I don't trust at all, is WhatsApp, because people keep forwarding news without ascertaining. And then there was a little fashionable sentence that came up, forwarded as received. Now that is absolutely disowning any responsibility. Why should I forward something which I don't endorse or I don't believe in? So whenever somebody writes that, I tell them, firstly, I don't even pay attention to it. But if I have a known friend who writes that, I say, please take ownership. You're not supposed to be forwarding. You're not a postman to just forward whatever came to you. So that's what my...
Gotcha. Yeah. Forward as received. It's kind of like spreading rumors without actually saying, I don't know if I believe this, but I want to share it with you. And I don't think that doesn't do anything for me at all.
But that is the point that you're mentioning is quite interesting, because today, well, the alternatives that we have to be up to date is using WhatsApp, and WhatsApp do not have really good management that say, okay, if you're in a group of 200 people and you start finding these kind of issues and you describe, Sushit, I cannot do anything else but leave the group. And that is that's a huge opportunity for people. How really is going to change into a manageable source of information. Then I don't know exactly what other alternatives, because if you go to Facebook or if you go to Telegram, all that things are the same thing. I don't know if you are using, for instance, right now Discord. Then Discord is becoming to be the de facto communication tool for crypto people.
It's so funny because Discord has always been a gamer's tool, and both gamers and the crypto folks, I look at it at the moment, at least the conversations, the communications I've had, it's been more of real. It's like how some people are using Twitter, just real time live information. Here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. But I think it's, when I look at any unregulated media, and I prefer they be unregulated, you still have to be at this word called discerning. You still have to be discerning on where the information is coming from, and whether or not you could actually see it in 2, 3, 4 sources. And I don't know why we're not taught this in school. We're not taught on how to be discerning. And so if we're trusting the news media less, the question is, who do we trust? And I think one of the things I'm going to say, and I'd love to have Jorge, I'd love to have you, Sushil, and by the way, if anyone who wants to come, just make sure if you want to come and join us, feel free to just let me know in the chat, and we'll promote you to speaker. The thing that's interesting to me is I may Sushil, you got me thinking about something. So let's say there's a friend that I know they do all the research. I know they're very discerning, and they normally share information that they've thought about. And they said, here's an article. I like it. I've read it. I agree with it. And what happens without letting me know, or anyone else in their network know, that they share something that is no longer something they really have any discernment on? It's just something they read and they just wanted to share, and they're just saying sharing as is. I think what happens is I end up losing a little bit of trust in them. Unless I really read it and understand why they're doing that, I might actually lose a little bit of trust. They may lose a little bit of credibility in my eyes because I really am looking for some. If I'm not getting my news from, for many people, we're not getting news from from news outlets or social media, like then you want to rely on the friends who have similar opinions to you, but then that also can get skewed. I don't know. It's a really interesting thought process. So it looks like we lost Social in the room too. Said he was having internet problems. I think I'm having an issue here of I'm actually going on the media on Tuesday, and I'll be on the radio I think it's mostly across the country, talking about this survey that came out. And the survey, like I said, it's focused on the fact that we are trusting media that much less. So the couple of the highlights I'll share is there's absolute fatigue in news consumption, right? Because they focus on just the high level stuff and sometimes not the over stuff. The one thing about COVID for a period of time, it did bring a little bit of trust back into the news media, but that's now gone. And then, the coverage of the Ukraine crisis was one of those things that is it being done in a fair way? Is it really opening up the world in a positive way? And in the UK, the BBC, which was that primary vehicle that everyone thought was always safe, distrust of the BBC has grown from 11% in 2018 to 26% today. And so the question in terms of what does that mean is the answer is, where do you go? And I think, Jorge, that was the reason why I asked that question. That's why you got me interested in going at it in the first place, is where do you go? And as I've been asking some of my friends, by the way, one of the answers I got was, well, you have to go to both sides. You have to go to the liberal sides, far left, far right, and see what they both say. And then try to go to the places that claim to be neutral, and I think if you're going to be spreading information, I think it's in your best interest, or if you're going to be taking action, it's in your best interest to have more sources, more information.
But that's a great challenge to really is. Twitter, by all means, is a very good alternative, but it's not an easy job to manage, to who you follow, how you filter information. That takes a lot of effort. And if you say having more sources, in the way that I call the information diet, one of the things is how you explore what are the trusted sources that you would like to be getting. And for instance, one of the points that I was exploring in the discussions this week was, for instance, when you are seeking for information, Google to seek information, if you get the most popular or the most referenced information. And when you are learning about subjects that are quite a bit into the brand new subjects, the goals is the other way around. There is very few people, and for you to find who are the best few people that are into that subject is something that is much valuable. But it's a completely different algorithm about that. And that is quite interesting. And being here in the Silicon Valley, we are always looking for what is the new things. And when you are looking for trends, my question here is, you are looking for trends that already happened, or you are looking for what things are going to be trends?
That's easier, by the way. looking for
Let
trends
me
for.
know that. I will happy to learn about that.
I think looking for trends, looking for hot things that are happening where people are speculating. I find that much easier. You know, if you just start googling the future of, and there's always somebody who wants to sell you something that has done a very reasonable job of keeping track of things that are going on. Like, what is the uh, one of my friends does what's changed in LinkedIn over the last quarter, and he does a monthly, I'm sorry, a quarterly seminar just on that, you know, and I think you could find that in almost every technology or profession or opportunity. I mean, that's the cool part. Where it comes down to um, is if for instance, in the United States, on Friday, the law Roe versus Wade, which was in place for 50 years, was taken down, and now states have the decision of whether or not abortion is legal or not in the state itself. So what does that really mean, and who do you listen to? And you know, um, I've heard people say, well, if you look at the surveys, they all say one thing and the opposite happened. But I've heard those rules, though, that statement, but I haven't done enough research to go, was that really true? So one of the things that I've been reminded of is I need to go and Google, let's look at the surveys that are done, and then be able to at least have some information that says, is that, did that really happen? So that's a current news thing, and the answer is it legitimate or not? Is it really true that what's happening is more political than the people's choice? I don't know that answer, so I don't want to talk about it, right? And that's true on almost anything that's hot. Is I think if you're a thought leader and people are watching you, I think it's important that you double check, that you're more discerning on who you are and how you share.
Yeah, but you're touching a very complex point. There are subjects that you say, I want to be informed about that, but I don't want to expose in that subject. And you don't want to be visible. And there are other subjects that you say, that is a very important subject, and I want to be visible. And that's true. You may notice this thing right now in Clubhouse or things like that. Is you can be talking and talking and talking, and the people listen. You know who is listening, but that is enough. And in the podcast is much worse, because you maybe have huge amount of people listen you, and you never know who was that people. But the point is here, how you are able to be keeping into that information. And in the concept of the information diet is how I be informed about the how the meetings or the information that can be there, and that information that can be there, and you want to watch or not about that. That's part of the way in that you customize your information diet, because you say, okay, for instance, this abortion is you turn on the TV, or you watch into Twitter Spaces, or it's a subject that everybody's talking, and to whom to listen. I don't have any clue idea who should be the right place to be listening about that.
I agree. And April, I think we said something that you wanted to come and share.
Maybe. Maybe. I wanted to inject, I don't know, another perspective. I'm just trying to wrap my brain around what it is exactly that you all are talking about, but I think I get the gist. I don't know that a lot of people give a whole lot of weight to body language. And I'm not talking about the status quo type of like the person rolled their eyes, so they must think this or they must feel that. I'm talking about truly watching somebody's footsteps, be it in text, in audio, in video, in photos, and using that to discern somebody's credibility. What are your thoughts on that as far as discerning? Because I heard you use the word discernment before. Does that give you a better picture when you take into account the whole picture of how somebody is showing up in the world using all of these mediums that exist nowadays? Because we can't rely just on a survey. We can't rely on what our friends are saying. We can't rely on what the media says. But can we make informed decisions about a person and then take it a step further and go to that person if they're accessible, or somebody who knows that person, and say, these are my thoughts. This is what I've come up with that I think you're saying. And this is what your behavior is telling me that I believe you're saying that brought you to this conclusion. Is that true? Yes or no? Can we do that?
God, that's pretty cool. Tell me could you summarize your question? Because I heard about 5 of them and I didn't know which one I should really focus on.
I think I watched the Johnny Depp trial way too many days because in my head I just heard, objection, Your Honor, compound.
Yeah.
Digital body language. How much does that weigh in on discernment of what somebody's saying, in your opinion?
Oh, that's an amazingly cool question. And it's so open-ended, so I'll do my best. It's funny. I for those who I should probably at some point next time I'm not talking, I'll put it in the chat. I've got a YouTube channel called Dear Credibility Expert, and I answer. Well, actually, it's called Credibility Nation, and I have a series on it called Dear Credibility Expert, and we answer as many credibility questions as we can in 10 minutes, and I do that once a week. And somebody asked me a question. So April, first I'm going to say what the question was, and then I'll try my best to answer both what you said and what the question was. What he asked was if somebody is wearing 2 different colored socks, or if they have cufflinks with their name embroidered on it, are they more or less credible? Because in some industries, that would make them more. In other places, it would make them less credible. And so it's such an interesting open-ended question. So I've been thinking about that a little bit. And now in your question is if somebody says something, how they look digitally, does that help you make a decision of whether or not you trust them or not? Right. And so, for instance, if I'm looking at a publisher or a news service and I'm reading their headlines, and the headlines are the headlines have misspellings in them, more than one, but a bunch of them, I'm going to inherently trust them a little bit less. Right. If now it depends. There may be areas, if it's the type of places where I didn't expect that, then that may not have the same weight to me.
But wait, can I ask you a question right there? Because you'll get too far away from it.
Of course.
So if you see spelling errors and you trust them less, what's your why?
Well, by the way, it's a great question. Thanks for asking that one. It depends on who they are. So specifically, I said it in relation to news outlets and publishers. Okay. And so my why is a news outlet. The goal is to represent represent the news the best way possible, which means that they should have double checked. A publisher, the goal is to represent the person they're publishing. So if somebody is, so we're a publisher. One of the things I've got a book publishing company. We publish 750 books. If I publish a book for somebody else and I've allowed misspellings to happen, whether it's our fault or their fault, the person who's going to suffer is the person who's the author of the book. And as a publisher, I should suffer as well because I let that happen. If a news outlet publishes something with a lot of spelling mistakes, it means that they didn't double check the spelling mistakes. So my concern is they didn't double check the news. Does that make sense?
Yes, and then I'm a question person. So how many errors before you're not trusting? Is it 1? Is it 5? Is it 100? Is it on one particular article or book, or is it on multiple? Like, what's the measure?
I do, it's sometimes life doesn't have easy yes, no answers. So I would say, let's say we're talking about the title of a book. If it's the title of a book, that has more weight than words that are in chapter 6. Right. So if it's a title of a book and it's just absolutely spelled wrong, like the printer made a mistake, that would carry big weight. If, in chapter 6, there was a word spelt wrong, or one of the things that I'll notice is sometimes in books, they may use an English spelling in one chapter and then a UK spelling in another, because there are words that are spelled differently. It's that inconsistency. What I'll say there, April, is those sort of things are, I have a word for that. It's called crud. CRED. Cred are those things that just slightly erode credibility a little bit. Not necessarily a lot, but a little bit. So if I go to a publisher's website and they don't have the proper copyright at the bottom of the page, it erodes their credibility for me just a little bit. And so but I don't know, I don't have a hard and fast. I can't say, well, they spell one thing wrong, it's wrong. No, because that's, human nature. Sometimes we do these things and we can't double check. But if it's consistent over and over, think about probably a better way to say it is the ambiguity you have when you go to the dentist. When you go to the dentist and you have plaque on your teeth, you're not guaranteed you're going to have a cavity. But the more plaque you have over and over again, the better chances are you have a cavity. The more crud that is part of how you show up, right? So to go back to the bigger question that you asked, if you're a business person covering a business event and you show up in a cutoff t-shirt, unless that's your brand, unless that's who you are, it's a little bit of crud, right? So you asked visually in terms of how they show up digitally. If you cover serious things all the time, but on your Facebook profile, there are lots of pictures of you partying, that's going to affect your credibility a little bit. That's, once again, a little bit of crud. And the best way I could say it is, I don't know how much plaque you need on your teeth before you have a cavity. I don't know how much crud you really need before you absolutely lose credibility. Does that make sense?
It does. And what I'm hearing you say is that you use discernment through proper vetting for whatever that is for you. And I think that a lot of people don't do that. As I'm sitting here right now watching your face on LinkedIn, I'm watching your eyes are like looking up at the ceiling for those notes that don't exist. But I know you're really in deep thought, thinking through everything carefully that comes out of your mouth before you say it. And for me, that's digital body language. That's a big tell for me about how you show up in the world. You're not just regurgitating things that you've heard from other people. You're actually thinking about it. And now you're probably all self-conscious because I'm looking at you. But
oh, by the way, thank you. I'm honored. And no, I appreciate the discernment and asking the question with I'm not even going to say a hidden agenda, asking the question so you could focus on what was important to you. That's pretty cool.
But I really would like to keep a little bit further in that because these, first of all, I love the concept of the digital body language. That's something that is very complex and is something that I never think about that until right now. That say, well, digital body language in a video is one way, but even that when you are having a conversation like the Clubhouse that is just audio, is you have a different digital body language in some way. And I would like to jump into how to connect that situation that is your digital body language that represents how you feel with what you say, and more when you say the mistakes or the things. We're living in the Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is famous for fail fast. And fail fast sometimes is a way that can create not very trusted relations, because you try to test something, and when you test it, you fail. And if you fail, that is where your digital body language comes in, or your body language or your mindset in any way, because you say, okay, I did wrong. What I learned is a huge difference than say, I am ashamed of that, I am worried about that, or how you manage. And that situation change from place to place. There are places that failing one time is catastrophic, and here, failing, if you learn from there and you expose your learnings, you're a hero in some way.
Were you done? I felt like you were part sentence, Jorge.
Yeah, well, no, I just stopped there because I tried to organize a longer description and was not an easy thing to keep going.
I'm sitting there going, wait, there's okay, really okay. But I was thinking there was more. Yeah, it's interesting. And by the way, I have to say, and it's Dear Raj. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. In the private room, you're adding such great feedback and great content, and it's helping to update some of the thoughts that I have. But you did say something, and I did want to. I want to read a couple of the thoughts for those that are here. So it says, in my eyes, media nowadays heavily focuses on promoting themselves by hopping on the trends alongside compromising the actual purpose of providing and sharing news. And so, by the way, I can't disagree with you at all on that. There's many media who are trying to focus on potentially metrics that are really no longer relevant for them. It's how many people are watching, how do we get more viewers? I mean, they are from an old world advertising perspective, but some of the tactics they may go through to get those is compromising the news itself. So I'm going to agree with you there, and then I'm going to disagree with you on your next statement. It says most of the time, those surveys are fabricated in many ways as per the author's desire. And I don't know, I that's an interesting thing. So this is so going back, in case you haven't been here, one of the things I started off the conversation with is there is a survey that came out from Reuters, once again, an outlet that's generally considered, to give you consistent, clean news, but Reuters and Oxford University, once again, a university that is typically held in high esteem. And they did a survey that showed that less and less people are believing in the news. and it's where do you get your news from? Many from social media, but that's also going down. So overall, the where people are getting news has continued to go down in almost every location. One thing that did pick up was more people were getting their news from TikTok, for what that's worth. And so I'm going to say, as somebody who's done surveys myself, maybe I have a bias in it. So I'm not gonna say that I don't think. I'm not gonna say 100%, but generally speaking, when I do a survey, I'm just really curious about the end product. I'm not actually. I don't do a survey with the expectation of driving a bias, and maybe some people do. But for most, let me not say most. There are many, many surveys that I've seen where I've not seen a bias built into the actual survey themselves. Although I can't disagree that I have seen surveys that have had bias put in. Now I know what to say. It goes back to discernment. If you read a survey and somebody has results, one of the things I might ask you to consider is going back to the source of the survey and reading the questions. Because sometimes just reading the questions can help you ascertain whether or not there was bias inserted into the survey. That's interesting.
But that is quite interesting about surveys, because surveys in some direction is very hard to develop them unbiased. You have a purpose that you want to achieve, getting some kind of information. In the way that you describe it, I love it, but it's not an easy job really to put that into an unbiased set of questions that open the discussions to bring whatever kind of reactions. Usually the people that react as the people that are focused into that bias, and that make more bias the survey.
Tell me about the surveys you've seen. Let's the last 3 surveys. Have you thought any of them have been biased?
Well, I am not a very survey-like person. Is for the same reason that we are talking here, because I have I don't know if it's correct or not, my assumption that the people want to validate some goal. And in that sense, is they usually, and my point of view about surveys, is when you start talking, is you are going to be using more and more social media, or you are going to go away of social media. In the way that they post the questions, make you feel that you love social media because it's a great value, or you feel that social media is taking over you and is using you, and try to, and in that sense, you avoid even to answer the questions.
That's interesting. I'm now that we've had this conversation, because I know when we did a survey when I first came out with the results for the credibility interviews. So for those that don't know, I interviewed 500 thought leaders on credibility, finished the credibility research in August of 2020. And in October, ended up running a summit that had 800 people, came out with a book, Credibility Nation. And we ran a survey. Typically, from what I understand, if you have a survey where you've asked 1,000 people cross-sectional from the United States, it's a survey that then can be applied to the United States. And we went out of our way to create questions which were not leading. Right? We went out of our way to determine, and it was along the lines of, what industries do you feel are credible? What industries are not credible? Right. And by the way, politicians as well as salespeople and lawyers were the least credible. Nurses, doctors were the most credible. Interesting, right? And when I read through the survey that I just read in terms of what the Reuters Oxford University survey, I am not reading an inherent bias, right? Because I don't see a benefit of them biasing the questions in one way or the other. Like technically, if they were going to bias, they'd want the numbers to go up, that more people are paying attention to the news. So less people paying attention to the news is kind of opposite of what they would like to have happen. I think what I look at, Jorge, I look at running a survey is a great way to potentially create something that's newsworthy.
And newsworthy. What that means, a newsworthy, is I try to grasp that.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, when I think about the word newsworthy, I'm thinking about something that is trusted, something that's vetted.
You want to put that on the mindset of the reader or the people that answer the survey.
Yes.
Yep. Because let me, and maybe this change the mindset of the question, but in some directions, one of the points I am trying now to figure out and going into, for instance, Twitter as a way to have it that if you, instead of having a survey of 10 questions, you ask a question, one question, and you start feeling how the thread is going in Twitter. First of all, I'm really surprised about people that are able to put a one question and they get 100 answers or 1,000 answers. That's something that say how they manage that. I really would like to be able to do that kind of things, and I am not so expert in that. But if you take these threads, you have a huge amount, and the answers usually in the threads are open answers, not and they allow to have non-biased kind of things. But even that, if the first person that start answering in the thread bias into one direction or in another, the thread may take a biased direction.
So you're saying that first or second respondent is going to influence what other people are saying.
That's correct.
So to me, that's why I like surveys a little bit better. Although I guess I see your point, because I sometimes do surveys on LinkedIn, and I'm curious. It's interesting. I'm curious if there's a bias. If you take the survey as the first person, or half of the way through, if you're responding. I don't know. How about you personally? For me, I don't really pay attention to how other people are responding, other than, so let me say when I might. If there's something that they're responding with that I had no idea and I hadn't thought about, maybe it's because I was in this marketing cookie cutter approach response. Like, this is what I think it is. And then so many people responded another way. It just made me think a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, but let me tell you an experiment that we run on LinkedIn some time ago. A group of 20 friends, we set together a question among the 20 of us. And each one of us write a post about the subject. Each one has their own flavor, their own interpretation, their own context, their own followers. And what's interesting to get a second degree of the question, how was interpreted or written by somebody, and see how the reactions came. And that was a quite interesting exercise, because some of them were people with 50,000 followers, and some other people were a more niche kind of followers. And you get a complete different responses. And we did that for 10 weeks in a row. Every week we did one question. And it was amazing that we never found a pattern that if was some person that was receiving more comments if one people were influencing or thinking that was a tremendous learning experience to grab information. But one of the targets that we were looking at, we didn't make it feasible to get it, was to learn it was some persons more trendy or more easy to influence or more easy to get responses than others. The results were complete broad. Some people with very low number of group of and very low, I say 1,000, 5,000, and that is not really too low. But with you have people with 50,000 followers is a big difference. And the difference among how many answers we got for each one was quite interesting.
Mark Jarrett's in the house. Hello, Mark. Good to see you, or see your picture.
Hi, everyone. Warm greetings from the United Kingdom to wherever you are.
Oh, thank you, sir. Hey, it's funny. We're getting close to the wrap up here. And however, I'd love to have you comment, because there was a survey that just came out from Reuters and Oxford University talking about how much less trust in general across the world we have in news outlets and the news media. And I'm curious what your thoughts were on that topic. Mark, you still there?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought you were talking to April.
No. Well, April had a chance and asked me a question. I'm going to ask her in a minute whether or not she thinks I answered her question. But no, Mark, this was to you. What do you think about the lack of trust that we have in it across the world in news outlets, and how do we fix that?
Yeah, I've noticed that, and I had quite a vigorous debate with my son recently about journalism. I think journalism is an honourable profession on the whole. That being said, we've got a terrible tabloid press here in the UK. My son shared a graphic with me recently that's quite powerful, because we're all in our own echo chamber now. So we tend to get reinforced with what we already believe in. But to answer your question, on the whole, I think media is, on the whole, the media I tend to follow, I think, are reporting the truth. So it's all good for me. But now there are so many outlets. Fake news is indeed a thing, unfortunately, but I try and avoid it, but it's not always possible.
Cool. What are you following? What media do you like that you feel is telling the truth?
Well, actually, when there's a breaking news story, I tend to go to Twitter and search for the hashtag of that story, because then everyone that's contributing to that story is almost like citizen journalism, and then you can get an idea of what's going on through multiple sources. Do you ever use Twitter during a breaking news story, Mitchell?
You know, I have to tell you, Mark, I haven't. But this week I was in Salt Lake City, and one of my authors, I published his book about 10 years ago, a guy named by the name of Jason Alba. Jason published a book. I'm on LinkedIn. Now what? And that was his initial comment to me. Was Mitchell? He used almost exactly the same words as you, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to do that going forward. It's the citizen journalism associated with something that's just really live, really happening this moment. It's kind of cool.
Well, that court ruling that came out in your country yesterday, we've just been having quite a vigorous debate about that.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, we covered that a little bit today.
Yeah. And that seems to be one of those very, very binary and divisive kind of issues that we could be discussing all night. But did you say it's a wrap now?
We were getting closer to the end, and I kind of wanted to check in with April to make sure that I covered her question, and then I think I wouldn't mind ending, if we're ending, I wouldn't mind ending with, because you only gave us one news outlet, Mark. I wouldn't mind ending with everyone thinking, either summarizing what happened, what they heard, or summarizing how they have discernment in terms of things that they hear. Right. So just getting prepared for that would be great. April, did I answer your question, or did I sort of answer a part of it and didn't finish?
I don't even remember the exact question because there's been so much good stuff covered that my brain wanders into other realms. But now you have me wanting to like talk about Twitter and that phenomenon, and to be continued.
Well, actually, since you have the floor for a second, that would be great. I wouldn't mind hearing from each of us, and this is something that we could leave as a departing gift for those that are listening, those that listen to the end, is first of all, you could say, is there a need for discerning data? I have to always say yes, but maybe that's my bias. So how do you have discernment? And then how do each one of us actually do that? And April, since you had the mic last, how are you discerning on your news services, on how you consume data?
Well, I love what Mark said, because I do the same thing. Because when you follow a hashtag and you can get, you're not just in that echo chamber, you're getting different viewpoints from different cultures, different lifestyles, red or blue. You're really going to get a better representation. Yeah, so you're going to get a better representation than I think a person who's doing a survey would, because I think people who do surveys are going to tend to put the surveys out to the people who are already in agreement with whatever the thing is that they're talking about.
Agreed.
Thank you. So one, hashtag following, and April, is that on multiple platforms?
I think Twitter does hashtags the best. People tend to use it incorrectly on other platforms, cats of Instagram, that kind of thing. So Twitter's the one who started the whole hashtag thing, and they do it well. So I tend to go there also for discerning data, for discerning people's experiences. And when I look at, going back to my body language thing, digital body language, because I can't see their actual body, but when I look at how people are showing up on social media, back to what you were talking about earlier with, they might show up one way on this platform, but then you look at their Facebook and wow, that's really not in sync with what I've seen in this other place. I like to do heavy vetting on a person when I plan to have a real point B with them, not just, just because it's a hobby, but because I'm seeking a collaboration with them or a friendship or whatever. I will do a heavy vetting across multiple platforms so that I can get a really good picture of how that person is showing up in the world. And I really don't believe that enough people do that. They just take one clickbait thing, they take one event, and they make a judgment on it, and they're either in or they're out based on that one thing. And I think we would all be served well to vet people. And just like in the Bible, we don't take a verse, we take the whole counsel of God into account, and then we live our lives accordingly with that whole counsel. The end. I'm dropping my
Yes, Mark.
April, are you there?
I am.
I've just sent you a request I'm following you on Twitter now. I'm Power Connector, and I know lots of women because I run 220 WhatsApp groups, but only 1 in 5 Americans use WhatsApp. Are you one of them?
You know, I dipped my toe in that water for like a nanosecond, and I got all kinds of troll requests and men trying to call me, and I'm like, who is this? And so no, I don't. It's on my phone, but I don't use it.
Okay, because I could introduce you to a lot of women who could benefit from your services. It's basically, you're a branding expert, right?
That is what I call myself, yes.
Okay. So you focus on the personal branding.
Yeah, specifically related to digital body language, because I don't think that's a niche that a lot of people are diving into.
No, it's a beautiful niche. Beautiful.
Yeah, April, let's talk privately. I'll have you on my podcast, because that's I'd like to explore the digital body language a little bit further. Yeah,
really
that sounds great.
Yeah, that's a great concept. I really love it. That's the digital body language.
Yeah.
But it basically, April, you and I seem to agree on that. I'll wrap it up at the end, and I'll bring that into my wrap up. Jorge, what do you say?
I have to run.
Yeah,
we are over the time.
All right. Anything you want to wrap up? Otherwise, thank you for joining us.
Great conversation. It's a great ideas. I really would like to follow up later with Mark about all this concept of. I am a heavy WhatsApp user, and I hate WhatsApp huge. In that sense, I have a mixed feelings. I know the power they have it. I hear it about that, and I am looking for different ways how to keep communications. And I will touch with you. I already see your power connector table dashboard, and you are in everywhere. And I ping you about that. And thank you for this conversation, Mitchell. We see you next week, and we keep going and figure out how to improve my information diet.
I appreciate that, Jorge. Thank you so much. Mark, anything you want to wrap up with, and then I'll do a final wrap up.
Yeah, networking is like opening a bank account. You cannot make a withdrawal until you've made a deposit. It's about serving others.
Dude, that's a great summary. Thank you, sir. Thanks for showing up. Even if it's at the end, your contribution has been very valuable. I mentioned at the beginning, things that could allow us to get booted from the room. And what I said is, if you're not a servant leader, if you demonstrate hate, right? And so for me, that's part of the Credibility Nation pledge, is to show up as a servant leader, and to show up as somebody who does, who lives life, even if it's not out of love, it's not out of hate. But if you live out of love, life is so much better. And April, one of the things in terms of digital body language, to me, what happens is when people get a perception of you, if that perception is consistent across platforms, then you're perceived as being more credible. You're perceived as being more knowing. And so for me, being vulnerable, I've been playing with Twitter for a while. I've got an okay following, at 36,000 followers.
Wow, I just saw that.
It's an okay following. And I haven't really been active until now. This is the second, third time that I'm getting reinforced in a week to do hashtag following, specifically hashtag following on Twitter on hot topics. I'm going to start doing that. I'll just be clear. I haven't. And I'm like, okay, I now need to bring this in, because you have to be I think the one thing that Dheeraj said in the chat, and by the way, thank you so much for those who subscribe to the YouTube channel, Credibility Nation. Great, because I want to get it to over 1,000, and we're kind of at 100, and I'm sorry, we're kind of like 790 at the moment. I'd like to get that to 1,000. So if you're open to it, please join us at the YouTube channel, Credibility Nation. And what he said was, people are interested in agreeing with the masses instead of knowing the facts. And so I want to leave you with that statement. I think it's important for us to be credible. And by being credible, what I'm going to say, you need to be true to yourself. What do you believe? How do you show up in the world? Do you do it consistently? And to me, not just the digital footprint, April, but do you do it consistently when I'm home with my family, when I'm out playing with my friends, when I'm whatever it is that I do, when I'm in either the boardroom or I'm with clients on executive coaching one-on-one? Am I always the same person? The answer for me, it's been yes all the time, and I don't pretend, or at least I try my best never to pretend I'm not. Is that not true? I never pretend to be something I'm not. So I'll make that an absolute.
Your authenticity personified, Mitchell.
Oh, Mark, thank you on that.
Since we last spoke, by the way, the International Influencer of the Year reached out to me. His name is Ahmad Iman. He's on LinkedIn. He's got over 1 million followers on LinkedIn, which is quite unusual. And his ethos totally resonates with my ethos. So we've teamed up. And if you know of any solvent, successful people who want to up their game on LinkedIn, then I will just introduce them to him. And it's a win-win for everyone. Because he's got the eyeballs, 1 million followers is a lot of followers.
1 million followers is a lot of followers. Love that.
Yeah.
All right.
It's all good. And April has inspired me to up my game on Twitter. She's got 4,000 followers, and I've got 2,500. So I need to get busier on Twitter.
Well, Mark, I will say it's not about the numbers. It's about the engagement of the numbers.
Yeah, you're right.
So anyhow, hey guys, thanks so much for joining me today. If you want to, in the future, for those that want to be on video, let me know, and I'll make sure that you have the ability to be on the video. And we do stream live to Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. And it's the same time every week. I look forward to seeing you next week. And feel free. My guess is after doing the road tour on dealing with these surveys and the feedback that'll come back for that might be the start of the topics. But it'll be very interesting to see where we are and what we're doing. So I'm just going to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today and being part of Leaders Living Their Values.